Our resident commentator on the passing scene is award-winning author Harlan Ellison. When we call him award-winning, that's an understatement. Harlan has won more awards for his 62 books, more than 1,700 stories, articles, essays, and columns than any other living fantasist. His current books are Minefields, Mephisto and Onyx, and I, Robot Screenplay, based on concepts by Isaac Asimov.
Oh, all right, you caught me. Yes, this is one of the secret vaults here in the house. Yes, and you know what's in this secret vault? I'm going to show you what's in this secret vault. In this secret vault, part of my comic collection. Yes, folks, I've been collecting comics since 1939. Look at this. Look at this. Thousands of old comics. Ha ha ha. This is just part of the Marvel stuff. And do you know why I've been collecting comics? Because I love comics. And now, as a matter of fact, I have my own comic. Let me tell you about my own comic. This was not my idea. The producer said, let us do a show about your new comic. My new comic is called Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor. Now, let me tell you how I came by this comic. About 4 years ago, Showtime, the cable network, came to me and they said, we want you to host a kind of a, show of fantasy stories. And you could do, you could do things like from Dangerous Visions, or you could do your own stories. So I said, that's kind of interesting. So I put together a thing called Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor. So I put it together with an incredibly interesting framing device, I say with great humility, and we went and we talked about it. And they kind of beetled their brows and they scratched their heads like the little chimpanzees that they are. And they said, we don't understand what it is you're going to do with this framing device. We want you to do Rod Serling. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not Rod Serling. I have a very different kind of act entirely. So they gave it a pass. Now, about 2 months later, 3 months later, HBO comes to talk to me about the same thing. They had heard about this. So I go in and I show them the thing with the framing mechanism and blah, 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 blah. And they say, again, we don't understand. Why don't you have storyboards made up? I said, I got your storyboards right here. Anyhow, it was because storyboards cost a fortune to make. So I let that slide. Now, a little time goes by and I figure to myself, storyboards. There's got to be a way to have storyboards produced that not only don't cost me any money, but can make me some money. That's what I really wanted to do. And then I thought, epiphany, a comic book. A comic book, at its best, is like great storyboards. And if I can get people to adapt my stories and they look really great, then I'll just show it to these morons at the networks, and they'll go for it, and I'll have my own TV series, and then I can retire to Bora Bora and never have to worry about that moron Charles Platt ever again. Well, folks, the first issue is coming out in January. It's called Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor. We begin with a special, and then we begin the numbering with number 1 in April. And the stories are unbelievable. The great Doug Wildey, who only recently passed away, he did his last work for my book. He adapted one of my westerns called The End of the Time of Leinard. We got Pat Broderick doing an adaptation of Len Wein doing my story, Quick Time. We've got John Byrne adapting I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Peter David, the great Peter David, who writes The Hulk. Peter David did my story Catman, which is being illustrated by Diodato. It is a great magazine, and in every issue, there'll be an original short story by me around the cover. This is the cover of the first issue. This is an original Stephen Hickman illustration. The second issue is an original Michael Whalen. The third issue is Leo and Diane Dillon. We got the best artists. We got the best writers. They're going to be real, how shall I put this delicately, real fundament-kicking books. And it's my own comic. I got my own comic. You understand what I'm saying here? I'm age 60 and I got my own comic. I am a success at last. My pal Bob Bloch died at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Friday, September 23rd. This commentary goes in a couple of different places. Bear with me as I go there. When I got into L.A. in 1962, I was broke, dead flat broke. It's one of those Horatio Alger stories. I had literally 10 cents in my pocket, 10 cents. And I was getting divorced from a lady, and she had a son from a previous marriage, and we had driven out here, and I got here broke. And I wound up in a motel, and I was stuck in that motel for 2 weeks because I didn't have the money to get out. And I went and I asked Bob Bloch, whom I had known for many years. I'd known Bob since I was 14 years old. I went and I asked Bob Bloch if he could grub stake me a couple of $100 bucks. It's 1962. $200 was a lot of money. Bob had just come out of a year-long Writers Guild strike and was pretty close to the edge, had no money, but I didn't know that. He gave me the $200. I was unable to pay him back for 5, 6 years. He never asked me for it once. Never. When I paid it back, It's almost as if he didn't remember it. Bob Bloch was a good friend of mine. He was a great, great writer. He's a man who finished the last unfinished Edgar Allan Poe story, The Lighthouse. Among the many things he wrote, yours truly, Jack the Ripper, and a wonderful biography, what he calls an unauthorized autobiography called Once Around the Block. And he died. He died without getting a Grand Master Award. And a lot of people say, well, he wrote fantasy, he wrote horror. He also wrote science fiction, folks. He wrote it from the age of 17 on, when he was discovered by H.P. Lovecraft and made part of that inner Lovecraft circle. He wrote a lot of science fiction. But he never got a Grand Master Award. You know where part of this commentary is going, because I've been talking about science fiction writers of America and how they have been denying the Grand Master Award to at least 6 major writers who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. Bob died without getting that award. The days grow short, and SFWA, Science Fiction Writers of America, which says you can only give out 6 Grand Master Awards in a decade, are letting the days go by, and they're talking and talking and talking, and the time is now well past for talking. Those of you who give a damn, please send letters to the president of SFFWA. Her name is Barbara Hambley, and say, we read this stuff. You can have all the little private organizations you want, but it's still our literature, and we really want these people to get the Grand Master Award before they die. We're not talking here about not giving it to them this week. We're talking about them ever. If they die, it's too late. Which brings me to the second point that I was going to. Before Bob died, he was a very proud man, and he and his wife Ellie did not want the knowledge that he was dying to get out. Bob wanted to release that information himself. He wrote an article, it's in the current issue of Omni, about facing death. But he didn't want people to know about it because he didn't want them to think that he was needful of money or needful of attention. He was very, very proud that way. Unfortunately, a man who publishes a semi-little newspaper, a little amateur rag called Science Fiction Chronicle, before Bob Bloch died, ran a piece, Bob Bloch, on his deathbed. And he went into detail about Bob's cancer. It was very unpleasant, and the man was pilloried for it. I'm not even mentioning his name because I don't want to give him that much publicity. And when Bob's daughter, from Bob's deathbed, called him and said, why did you do this? This is a terrible thing. He argued with her and said it was his right to do it because this was news. Now, other newspaper people who happen to be in the genre, people like Christine Catherine Rush, who edits magazine of fantasy and science fiction, she says, no, I've been a journalist all my life. She said it is the public's need to know of the death, not of the dying. There is a lot of this goes on. It is bad taste. Science fiction, the fandom, fans, they're forever writing great eulogies about writers after they're gone. They want to put on conventions in their honor, but they don't do it when they're alive. They don't honor them when they're alive. It's then they can all beat their breasts and talk about how wonderful this person was and do the eulogies that you see in fanzines, endless stupid fanzine eulogies, but they don't do anything for them when they're alive. What they could do for them when they're alive is get them the Grand Master Award. The death of Bob Bloch brings this home to us very, very, very sharply now. The time for talk is past. I've done 4 of these, and SFWA has done nothing yet. Now is the time for those of you, writers and readers and fans and editors who give a damn, to do something. Put the pressure on, if for no one else, for the memory of Bob Bloch. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, with the death of Bob Bloch and Carl Edward Wagner and Burt Lancaster and Sir Devendra Varma, about 5 or 6 real nice people died the last couple of weeks as we are filming this. You think about time. You think about how much time you got left, and you think about what memory is. And in truth, who we are is only a congeries of memories. When I talk about this happening at some convention or that happening at some convention, it's only real as long as there are still people alive who can back it up. When I talk about meeting Hugo Gernsback, there may have been somebody else in Chicago who said, yeah, I saw that when Ellison met a Gernsback. It was really interesting. When Bob Bloch dies, the past goes. So I've been thinking about time. I've been thinking about time. And time, at this time of the year, is chronicled by calendars. It's a long stretch, I know, but I don't know, calendars just suddenly seemed important to me. And so I have assembled a group of really interesting calendars that you can go out and look for. Now, At this time of year, many of you get your new calendars and you get the latest Star Trek calendar, or you get the latest Hildebrandt calendar, or every year you may get the Boris Vallejo or the Frank Frazetta calendar. And I'm going to try this year to move you off that. I'm going to try to bring into your life a little culture. You hear what I'm saying to you here? I'm talking culture. What I would like to do is get you to start looking at some of the wonderful art images that are a little fantastic in nature, but are not specifically genre-oriented. Like, for instance, back here, let me reach for it. There's a cactus here, and I don't want to hurt myself, but one of the great artists, a man named Gustav Klimt. Klimt did these beautiful, beautiful paintings. And this is a calendar of Klimt art. And it's published by a wonderful publishing house called Tenus. And Tenus publishes many, many, many wonderful calendars with terrific artists on them. The Klimt is only one of them. The Klimt, let me show you the Maxfield Parrish. This is the Maxfield Parrish calendar. It is so beautiful. Maxfield Parrish was the master. Most of the fantasists of today, whether it's Don Maitz or Michael Whalen, will tell you that Maxfield Parrish was the man. There's Parrish. Keith Haring. You ought to see Keith Haring. He had a very short art career. It was only from 1981 to 1990. And he did these wonderful street drawings, and he did these wonderful kind of fantasy images of the universe. Keith Haring died of AIDS, and some of the images are vaguely sexual in nature, but as you can see, there's nothing vaguely sexual about that at all. He just had these wonderful, wonderful kind of innocent street images, and I recommend to you Keith Haring, the 1995 Keith Haring. These are all Tenus calendars. Kenny Scharf is one of these great modern fantasists. Kenny Scharf's stuff is so funny and so pretty that it'll make you smile every day that you have the calendar up. I recommend Kenny Scharf to you. That's S-C-H-A-R-F. Now, let me show you something that Tenus does that you're going to love. This is called a cassette, a CD cassette calendar. This is Magritte, and on the back is the calendar. But each day, each month rather, is a Magritte painting. This one is one of my big faves. This is an easel calendar. Now, this one was done by Chronicle Books in San Francisco. You got to ask for this. This is the Kinsey Locomotive Portraits, and it forms an easel like that, and it stands up like that, and you flip it each month on your desk like this, and you wind up with these great images of old locomotives. It's a terrific one. It's not fantasy, I know, but it's wonderful. My last one is one of my real faves. This is the Fractals 1995 calendar. These are the computer-generated images that are based on the fractal geometry of Mandelbrot, and they are just beautiful. And here is a for instance. This is called Snowflake in Winter. It's by Darrell Hepting, and it's Van Koch's Snowflake Curve, an early mathematical monster, and it's just gorgeous. And you hang that one up in your house, and people will come in and say, instead of seeing these oiled barbarian warriors and women with improbable breasts, they will say, you got culture, you got class, and you will have that class for a full year if you'll only listen to me.